All right. Well, depending where in the world you are, either good morning or good afternoon and evening. I am Lisa Berkley with Reed Price, Sandy Hart, Brianna Lathorpe, Betsy Spano, and Susan DeGaia, all of whom are working behind the scenes to make this possible. And this is Reaction to Response, a twice-a-month, year-long webinar series birthed through the Charter of Compassion Women and Girls sector to inspire and engage people to move from reactive to responsive behavior at the local, national, and international levels in order to create a more compassionate and just world. Just to give you a little bit of background, the Charter of Compassion International is a thriving global network of more than 400 cities or regions of compassion in over 50 cities with nearly 1,700 partners organized in 11 sectors of society. The women and girls sector is the 11th sector. The Charter for Compassion itself is a document that is affirmed by all of our partners and applied at the center of all decisions and policymaking for the cities or regions of compassion. Our vision in the women and girls sector is to elevate the work of our partners and our community to improve conditions and advance solutions for women and girls for global transformation. Before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to quickly go over some housekeeping rules. First thing is this call is being recorded. Second, if there are any questions or any difficulties that you have, feel free to post them in the Q&A or chat section and we'll try to help you, or just reach out to zoom.us. And then, of course, if you have any questions for our speaker, you can also type those in the Q&A or chat section, and we will get to the responses throughout the call. Please try to keep your questions direct and short, because there will probably be quite a number of them. Okay, let me now introduce today's guest, John Raymer. John, aside from having a very prolific background in the technology sector, is an American entrepreneur, civic leader, inventor, and musician. He is the founder and first follower of the Compassion Games International. And this occurred when he was moved by the events of September 11th in 2001 to focus his entrepreneurial energies in the not-for-profit community organizing. And in 2008, he was an organizational participant in the Seeds of Compassion, which was an event designed with a visit with the Dalai Lama. As the executive director of the Compassion Action Network, Raymer conceived and implemented the International Campaign for Compassionate Cities. He's the co-author with Phil Lane Jr. of Deep Social Networks and The Digital Fourth Way, and is a huge pleasure to have with us here today. And throughout the call, he's going to tell us a little bit more about his journey here and how we all can engage. So good morning, John.
Good morning, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the Charter and everybody for making this possible.
Awesome. So
the good work that I've been doing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Couldn't you repeat that?
I was just saying thanking you, but also the Charter for not just this call, but for all the good work that the Charter does and is doing, especially now. My gosh.
Yeah, thank you. And so in our earlier call, your and my earlier call, you shared with me a video that's been an inspiration for you and how you acquired the term of the first follower. So I'd like to just take a minute and show that video, because it really is inspirational and very much about what we're trying to do here with Reaction to Response, which is engage people. Cool. All right. Hold on one second. Let's get right back to it. And here we go. Okay, 1 second, and full screen. And here we go.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is over-glorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in. Leadership and
I love that video.
Yep, that's the one.
Totally love it. It makes me happy every time I've watched it, and I've watched it a number of times. So tell us how this was an inspiration for you.
Well, okay, so the thing is, and it's actually more than one version of that, I realized, but the point is that it's how you make a movement in 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you need to know how to make a movement in 3 minutes, right? Yeah. And the genius of that is that leadership is not, as at least it was for me before when I saw that, I thought leadership was the person who puts it all forward. In the case of the charter, the history of that, I saw that after we had this visit from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and just after the TED Prize had been awarded to Karen Armstrong. Mm-hmm. And then when the charter was unveiled in 2009, a year later, I asked myself after seeing that the question, okay, how can I be a first follower for the charter? What would that look like? And at that time, what was interesting was that the charter was such that you could only sign on as an individual. There was no way for an institution to sign on to the charter. But watching that video, it kind of revealed something important to me. And it mentions a few different things that are worth kind of repeating, is that first off, the movement can't be about you. It really does need to be about something greater than yourself. You know, it's humility over brand. It's mission over, you know, organization. And this kind of selfless way of leading was so obvious when I saw that. And in fact, the truth of the matter is the story unfolded with us. We began the Compassionate Cities movement with this question was, okay, so how could we get behind what Karen had wished for, thinking that that was a really great idea? And what would it take to make a movement? So, and I want to talk about how that happened, because anyone who's listening and wants this support, I mean, that's really what this call is all about, is right? How we, so in our case, what we did was we put forward what's called an assurance contract. We actually went to the mayor and the city council and said, well, if we could get 1,500 people to pledge their time, talent, and treasure to help others meet their basic human needs. Would Seattle become the first city to affirm the Charter for Compassion? So it wasn't just an ask, it was a conditional offer, basically, in which we had to do something as well. I don't know that they'd ever been offered something like that before, and I'm not sure they really knew what I meant, but they said yes, and we were able to succeed and make that happen. And that kind of gave us this momentum to go forward and then put the call out to others. And in that way, the Compassionate Cities campaign, really Louisville was our first follower. And then what happened was a number of cities signed on to do that. And just like you see in that video, you know, even though we were first follower for Karin, if it wasn't for Tom Williams and the gang in Louisville and other cities too, but they became so effective at taking the mantle from Seattle. And then many other cities have since, you know, learned from them. And that's how the movement really happened. So it's a miracle to sit here and, you know, here there's 400 cities around the world. And, you know, anybody watching who's serious about taking those steps in their own community. So important is to nurture those first followers and make it about, you know, the movement and not about you. And in that way, this has really proven to be successful. And in that way, I'm really humbled by it all, and you know, want to do everything I can to support anybody out there who thinks that this is something that they ought to follow and become a first follower in their community and nurture those people who sign in to support them, and hence, you know, grow a truly global movement inspired by and committed to creating a more compassionate world.
So you started off in Seattle. How did Louisville catch on? I mean, what was that? How did that happen?
Well, we had set up a website, and we put the word out, and people had signed up. There were people from all over. I don't know how they ever signed up. That is still a bit of a mystery to me. And it's easier now because with Facebook and, you know, social networks so ubiquitous. But they got the word there, and actually it was November 11th of 2011, 11/11/11. Was the day that the folks in Louisville affirmed the Charter for Compassion. And so it's not clear to me. I've never tracked down how they actually got that word, but a number of cities reached out. And in fact, it created a challenge for us here in Seattle, because the Compassionate Action Network was set up because we knew the visit from the Dalai Lama would be great, but we also knew that those 5 days that were free to the public, it was the largest event in the history of the state. We knew that it wouldn't fix all the world's problems, and we need to make sure, as is often the case with events, that just the momentum doesn't die out. So the Dalai Lama's visit really had nothing to do with the Charter for Compassion. It was just fortuitous. And I happened to notice, because I love the TED Talks, that Karin won the TED Prize, and there was this, you know, thread of compassion in both. So then we jumped on that idea. It took a year because the charter in 2008 was just a wish from Karin. Then it was in 2009 unveiled. And then we put out that call in 2010. And it was March of 2010 that we met the goal of 1,500 people, and then put the word out to other cities. The problem, or opportunity, depending on how you look at it, was that now as other cities started to ask us about this, first off, we had no clue what does it mean to be a compassionate city. I mean, it just sounds nice, right? You're like, sure, why wouldn't you want to be a compassionate city? So what happened to us was we had to confront the fact that we didn't really have a clue what we were talking about and what that would look like and how we would know if we were a compassionate city. And that gave us a chance to, you know, really do the real work you got to do to come to terms with what are you talking about. And actually we got lucky again. A friend shared with me an article from the Stanford Social Review Journal on collective impact. And what happened was that idea of collective impact, multi-stakeholder partnerships, had done a really good job of saying, well, you need to do 5 things to have a collective impact. And you need a shared agenda was one, but you need some shared measurement system, some way to know you're making progress. You need to have mutually reinforcing activities, things that strengthen each of the different, because so many groups and so many communities know you have these silos where so many folks are doing good work in the community but aren't connected to each other. And you need to have continuous communication flowing between those parties, and you need some backbone organization. Well, what happened in our case was the folks in Louisville really took the mantle, and their mayor there, Mayor Fisher, a remarkable human being. He was a very successful businessman who chose to become mayor. And we honored Louisville and the team and brought them to Seattle. And then what happened was the mayor sent me a letter through Tom Williams saying that they were the most compassionate city in the world and would be so till proven otherwise. Now, Louisville is very competitive in a really good way.
Mhm.
I mean, Muhammad Ali's from there, and March Madness, and, you know, there's so many things about Louisville that are outstanding. So that kind of crazy idea of what do you mean you're the most compassionate city? But if you remember those 5 conditions, all of a sudden I realized what a perfect way to implement collective impact, because the shared agenda was to be the most compassionate city. What would that, you know, that was easy to agree upon. And then we came up with the most simple measurements we could think of, which is really service. I mean, because so many of our traditions teach us that really, like the charter says, dethroning ourselves from the center of the universe through service. So we counted the number of volunteers, we count the hours of service, number of people served, the amount of money you raise. So those 5 conditions were easily met through the compassion games. And that's how the compassion games came into form, because the issue was really, okay, that's a nice idea to be a compassionate city. How are we going to get people involved? And how are you really going to be able to get people off the sidelines that aren't just thinking this is a good idea, but are really willing to do the work necessary in whatever shape or form that means within their community? So that was kind of the bridge that we built from the vision of being a compassionate city to introducing the compassion games as a way to move towards realizing that vision.
So you now have another question, which is that how did you go from how did you get the community engaged? How did you spread the word that this was happening? Did you use social media or?
Well, you know what? I had a really funny experience happen. So there's a United Way here in Seattle, and their Day of Caring. So when we first did the Compassion Games, we happened to choose a time period in September. And we still do the annual, we call them now the Global Unity Games, from September 11th through September 21st. And that year it was the Day of Caring, and there was an after party here in Seattle. And I don't know, you know, people were drinking at the party. Maybe that helped. So I had a table there with the Compassion Games, right? Mm-hmm. And I was shocked because of all these years of, you know, trying to get people to get involved and explaining all the facts about homelessness and all the issues, that did not move people to act. But when I would tell people, well, you know, the mayor of Louisville says they're the most compassionate city, people say, what? How can I get involved? And that was the craziest discovery, because there's something in that Neanderthal brain of ours that wakes up our pride. And there's, you know, we call it now a co-opetition. So we did some homework and discovered that actually the word competition, the root of that word is competere, which means to strive together. So part of the Compassion Games we call survival of the kindest is a reframe, if you will, a culture hack from this idea that, you know, that it's not survival of the fittest, and that competition is not about beating others. It's about striving together to be our very best. And those ideas became magic to me, and they still are. When I tell people, you know, we host the world's largest compassion competition, people say, what? And, you know, it doesn't take long from there for people to get the joke. Mm-hmm. And imagine, you know, if people competed not on, you know, outdoing each other, but doing their very best and challenging each other and sharing with each other the strategies and techniques and tools and practices that they've developed to actually move their community forward, that the world may be a better place for it. So, you know, it was a surprise. It was really, I left that meeting that, you know, it was like a party, after party for the Day of Caring. Mm-hmm. I said, wow, I could not believe how many people in response to, well, you know, the mayor of Louisville says they're the most compassionate city, just said, well, what, how do I get involved? I never had people asking me, how can I get involved like that?
Mm-hmm. Mhm. And so you now bring me more to the work that we're doing, but there's a couple things that come to mind. First, I don't know if we didn't speak about this before, but that Darwin, they're actually realizing that when Darwin was talking about survival of the fittest, actually fittest meant the one who built their community the most and worked collectively. And so even there, we're having a whole reframing of the paradigm for which we're building our world. And on a personal note, I'm profoundly happy about that.
Yeah.
So that's just a little side note. But so when you started to engage with people, how many people started off and where are you today? And I'm putting this in the context of here with this group of people in this webinar, because this is really what we're trying to inspire people to do, is to get involved, because the world is so chaotic right now and perpetuating so much unhappiness and fear. We want to give people the tools to engage, to make it a little bit better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, what happened was that first year when we did the Compassion Games, I asked the mayor to agree that it was a draw. You know,
You asked the mayor of Seattle.
no, the mayor of Louisville. Because,
okay.
you know, okay, because I had this problem. Like, now what are we going to do? Now that we did this, and actually, he really wasn't all that happy about that. I remember, but I went to Louisville, and I met Sandy Hart, and that changed everything. I mean, Sandy, you know, what can I say? We're so blessed by her presence and commitment, and she really, you know, in her partnership, we brought the games to another level. So that first year we played, we agreed it was a draw.
So I'm just going to interrupt you for one thing, one piece, which is Sandy Hart is also now the director of the Women and Girls sector for the Charter for Compassion, for those who are on the call and don't know. Okay.
Yeah. No, and Sandy's done so many good things. She also was inspired by 9/11. That was a turning point in our country. Many times people, when they share their stories with me over the years, I've heard that event, you know, was one of those kind of, I guess, like Pearl Harbor was for a previous generation. That was kind of a wake-up call. But it was that visit to Louisville with Sandy. And now, I mean, there's been over 700 teams. They've had, you know, over 5 million people served. The thing that's really great about the games, and there's so many things that people love about the games, I'm grateful for that, but people report. So there's 4 steps to play. So you first sign up to play, and you can play as an individual or you can organize a team. And from that point forward, you then kind of identify what are you going to do. And you can do anything from a random act of kindness to organize a service project, revitalize a neighborhood, paint a house. I mean, all sorts of things have been done. So the second step is then you play your heart out. And then the third step is you report that on this compassion report map. And a lot of people, you know, in fact, that's where we came up with this whole idea of being anonymous and a secret agent of compassion. Because a lot of people say, well, I don't want to report. I'm not doing this for credit. And it's not about that. But by sharing what we're doing with others, it elevates and creates this kind of environment in which people are learning from each other. And that was a discovery for us as well. So the third step of reporting, and not just reporting, but reporting and reflecting. So we ask people not just to describe what they did and give us the numbers, but also tell us what impact what you did had on the people you served and on yourself. Mm-hmm. And that third step of reporting and reflecting on what they did led this beautiful expression of compassion in the world, which we can show at some point. Mm-hmm. And then to share and celebrate what we accomplished so that others could discover and find out about it. So now, just counting what's been reported, which I think, I don't know, is 10% or 20% at most, the numbers added up to over 5 million people now have been served Compassion Games.
So maybe it's worth it now to switch over just to show people the map a bit about it. Because I know when you showed me, I was like, oh my gosh, that's just really inspirational. So hold on one second. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen.
Well, why are you sharing your screen too? Esri is a company. I want to just acknowledge them. They've been so supportive of us. They're a GIS company, and yeah, over to the right there, I see it. Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right.
So that screen there has 2 things going on there. There is a map, and then there's a gallery on the right. And as you navigate through the map, those numbers are the number of reports that have been submitted in these different areas. So if you move into a particular area or click on any one of those tiles in the gallery, those are all reports.
Compassion in Dubai. Let's see.
Yeah, so 550 volunteers,
Wow.
30 hours served, 100 people were 30 hours, 100 people were served there. And you see those two paragraphs. The first paragraph is a description of what they did, and then helping others helps us to make life easier and a little better for them. It also helps us to realize how fortunate we are to be in a position to help others.
Wow.
And
Wow. It's beautiful.
it's great. I mean, and you know, games have been played in prisons. I mean, this is part of what's possible for all of us is to, there's a term that Stanford, the social review journal uses called network entrepreneurs, which they're creating a platform upon which others are doing things. And that's certainly the case with the Compassion Games. I could have never dreamt up all of these incredible things that people have done.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing when you see this map of the whole world. Just, I mean, that's a lot of people.
It is. Like I said, and we total up, we have a scoreboard for each of the co-opetitions, right? So what happened is it's evolved over time that there are 5 times throughout the year that the games take place. And so not only is the Global Unity Games in September, but actually part of why we're doing this call today from our perspective is it's World Water Day. And that's part of launching this upcoming Earth Week, which is, the theme is Water is Life. There you go. And that's going to be happening from April 22nd through the 30th.
So maybe we can talk some people, talk them through where so they would come to your site, compassiongames.org, and then they want to play. So this is, they would go to
co-opetitions.
Co-opetitions.
Tough word. I wish it would.
And we'll find ourselves here this week or next week.
You see the list of them right there. So we kind of rank them by what's coming next, right?
Okay, great.
Now notice this is a new feature on the website. You see there's a little orange, yeah.
Okay.
So we now have somebody, well, Summer's not available right now, but Summer's usually there. So people actually can come to the site at any time and if they need help. So we've made a secret agent of compassion available for people.
Oh, that's fabulous.
But
So
this is what's called the landing page. So each co-opetition has a landing page, right? And this talks a little bit about why this is a co-opetition worth getting involved with. And Dr. Lisa Walker was another, I mean, Sandy was an amazing influence on making all this possible, as was Dr. Lisa Walker. And she pointed out that compassion happens in 3 dimensions. So not only compassion for others and not only compassion for ourselves, but compassion for Earth. Green compassion, as Mark Barish calls it. So why play in Earth Week? We have this, if you keep scrolling down, exactly. Gave some ideas of what people will get from participating. But if you keep going down, you'll see there's other sections here. And then the 4 steps we talked about a few minutes ago, as well as then different featured ways to play. And we have some other cool things. Lisa just shared with me this whole project called 2020 or Bust, really around climate action. And we do a compassion relay. Did you see that up there? That's become another thing. During the relay, during the co-opetition, and actually before it, we passed the torch to different champions of compassion. In fact, Sandy was one because of her tremendous work with World Interfaith activity. We passed the torch to her last co-opetition.
So that's right. I'm remembering now. There is a place that people can make their own and submit their own stories, correct? And that's part of that, of passing the torch?
Well, we write a story for each champion, okay? In fact, go over the co-opetitions, go back there, and go down the very bottom to Harmony Week. Yeah. We actually made a video of this. So this was World Interfaith Harmony, which is the first week of February.
Okay, so we just have completed that. All right.
There's a little video that tells the story about what happened. There are the numbers. So there were 130 teams in 29 countries.
Wow.
Over 7,000 volunteers, 29,000 people were directly served. And, you know, the United Arab Emirates has been a remarkable gift. Brione was the one who brought that to us. And in the Green Shake during the Giving Games, which is another one of the co-opetitions that happens at the end of the year. Part of what the problem we had was that the schools wanted
switch back to you. Is there anything, before I switch back to you, is there anything else you want to share with us?
Yeah, I wanted to show you where Sandy was. If you go, again, this is the landing page, so similar, but there's going to be here, there you go. Stop right there. Scroll that up a little bit. Now what it is there's each one of those boxes below is a featured story. So we start with Sandy and the Charter for Compassion, the women and girls, right? So there's a story there about Sandy Hart as a champion of compassion. That's her with the compassion torch.
All right. Should I play it?
You can. I mean, it's fabulous. Sandy's beautiful. That's her husband there. And Summer.
Passion games, survival of the kindest, bring to us your finest. We're all being called into this time to stand and rise with our shoulders out and our chin high, and to say that we are here to make a difference in the world and to bring what it is that only we can bring individually. And that's what's so exciting about this time, is it's requiring that of us. We don't have to ask permission anymore to be who we are. We have to bring it, because that's what's being asked of us, is to bring our light to the darkness, because there is no darkness where there is light. And so that is where my gratitude is. I'm grateful just to be alive at this time in history. And my wish for the world is that that we remember, that everybody here know that we're in a space of a rebirth, that we're going through the birth canal right now, and it's painful, but it's good. You know, those contractions are good. And if we could just remember our Braxton Hicks, if we can remember our breathing exercises, if we remember to just say in a space of awe and wonder what it is that is in making us all sort of frustrated and angry, and instead looking at it with awe and wonder and going, how can I bring my light to this? My wish is that we find peace and patience with one another, and remember that we are one global family.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Now, let me say a couple things about that, because that compassion torch, which is in her hand there, we had actually gotten that at Standing Rock, Summer and I, during the Global Unity Games, no, Global Giving Games they were, traveled around the country. This was in December, and it started, actually it was November through December. We were at Thanksgiving at Standing Rock, which was an amazing experience. And Greg Sherwood, one of Chief Phil Lane Jr., who's our chairperson, relatives, gave us that staff, which became the Compassion Torch. We have a few compassion torches. One was in Marrakesh. So we went all the way around the country, 25 different states in 7 weeks, and visited with Sandy and her husband there. And that's what she was holding in her hand. And the idea there, and it is an ongoing co-opetition we have, is to build this global fire of compassion and commitment. My own process was to say, hey, in light of all these changes that are happening, what else to do but up the game?
And I think, you know, you're touching on something very, very relevant too, and as did Sandy in that video, which is we're in such a time when people feel so disempowered, and that there's this need to hold the duality, which is both to honor the grieving process or the painful process and not run from it, not try to do a quick fix, but say, okay, what can we do to really shift this so we can stop history from repeating itself and stop these like horrific cycles that we're going through, just to protect the earth and all of her inhabitants, both those that are animate and those that are inanimate. And this actually brings me now to a couple of questions that we have here. One of them says, what is the most surprising outcome or experience or story as a result of the games over the years?
Well, certainly, you know, and Sandy was a part of this too. The bringing the games into the prisons, that demonstrated so clearly that you know, any context in which you bring compassion and make a compassion competition work, and the creativity that the folks who are in prison brought to bear on how to bring compassion to life there, that was stunning. Leah Mandelbaum really led that initiative, and Shayna Lester was the interfaith minister who first proposed the idea. But frankly, you know, there's been so many. The Play for Peace folks have chapters all over the world. United Religions Initiative. And this is one of the things, Lisa, that's been, for those of us who are looking to make movements, you know, it's humbling what people will come up with and do. And our job in so many ways, I think, is to just be in awe and to honor and respect each other as peers in all this. I mean, it's going to take, you know, we need to, you know, this is one of my favorite proverbs, is a Chinese proverb that says, if we don't change our direction, we're likely to wind up where we're headed. And, well, that's been kind of, I've been saying that for a long time. And I'll keep saying that until I'm, you know, confident that we've really embraced this moment, that each of us are leading. Each of us, you know, this whole idea from reaction to response, I think that's brilliant. I think it takes each other and learning how to learn from each other. And that's been the big surprise of the games for me, is that give people just a platform upon which they can shine and, you know, be in awe of what people are capable of. And be the first to recognize it. Things always get better when you know, allow people to be critical in a good way. And all the good things about the Compassion Games come from so many people who've made suggestions and proposed ideas that we've hopefully been responsive to, has done the best we could do. It's not easy to be a nonprofit and sustain yourself in doing these kind of things.
No, it's not. You know, you also, there's two other questions, and one of them is, it touches on this sort of how do you acknowledge how much good you do, and also there is a cultural relevancy issue that comes up. So, for example, this question says, Muslims are very resistant to sharing information about giving because they believe their giving is between them and God. How can you encourage individuals to move and share their service to encourage others via their service?
Yeah. Well, they can report anonymously. I mean, that's the thing. So if they think it's about getting credit, then I understand. But it's really not about getting credit. It's about making known what's going on in the world. People need to see signs of actions that are life-affirming and positive. So I encourage people to report, not because they deserve or need the credit, but because it will brighten the path for somebody else. You know, by lighting another's fire, we brighten our own path. So the idea there, and I respect that. I mean, this is part of the joy of doing something on a global basis, is to run into these kind of cultural differences and learn how to appreciate those differences and work with those differences and see those as a source of our strength. One of my favorite quotes is, you know, connect through our similarity, but innovate through our diversity. So to our Muslim brothers and sisters, I would encourage them to share what they've done, not because they should break the confidence that they have with God, but it's fine to be anonymous, but it's also great for other people to know about the giving that's taking place, and may that be an inspiration to others to do more. I mean, that's what we need right now, you know, to catch fire. This idea that each of us are the center of the universe, and we can make a difference in our universe wherever we are, everywhere, all at once.
Okay, that's good response. And that was, somebody said, oh yes, anonymous is a great alternative. Okay, so there's another question, which is, do you have suggestions for how this model of starting a movement and sustaining it can be implemented locally in terms of moving away from the new administration's extreme agenda? And can you talk also in that context about Standing Rock and the pain of that fight?
Yeah. Yes, those are both things that are. So to tell the truth, you know, I mean, for me, I have been shaken by the impact of the new administration. I mean, I have not yet found my normal, and it's unbelievable. It really is. And I'm determined to not let myself be a victim of this. And, you know, it's too easy to use the new reality as a way to justify being sick about things. At the same time, you know, when I kind of went through all of it, I said, well, this means we need to up our game. This means that the only way that I know how to respond to all this, once I got past the grieving and the anger and all of that, was to say, all right, we need to do better. So this is part of what I hope is going to be the response that we're going to collectively have. In fact, I think Jon Stewart said, he was making this point that, in fact, this may make America great again, because if we all become vigilant and realize that, some of the things we took for granted, we just can't take for granted anymore. And we need to preserve and protect those civil liberties and those things that are really so important to us. And it's painful to watch. I mean, it's unbelievable every day. It's kind of like, he also said that, Jon Stewart said that the presidency is supposed to age the president, not the people.
It's true. You remind me, there's I can't remember his name, but a very wise rabbi who said the loudest sound in the universe is that of a habit breaking. And this is every time that on the microcosm level, when we're sick, there's always that day, even if it's just a flu or cold, or if some part of us says, oh my God, I'm dying, this is horrible. And so I think really on the collective level that is, and this is where I think that the compassion games and Charter for Compassion, we get to really help birth and hold the space for new and positive solutions.
Exactly. In fact, and that's what brings us to Standing Rock, because Standing Rock was a huge victory. It was a victory for nonviolence. It was a victory for peace and prayerful ways of responding to something. And it brought together, first off, so many tribes that hadn't been united in a long, long time. The ministers that came to Standing Rock to support the First Nations, the veterans who came to support the First Nations, the forgiveness ceremony that moved everybody who saw it. America, I had a wise indigenous woman say to me once that the heart of the indigenous people will never heal until the heart of the American people heals. And if you really care about the indigenous people, we've got to own the huge mess we've made. I mean, Article 6 in our Constitution says that treaties are the supreme law of the land. And there isn't one treaty that we haven't broken with First Nations, Native Americans. So Standing Rock was a huge blessing. And it's as terrible as it is, the fact that oil is going to be flowing underneath that river and putting at risk so many people in the process. Look at how the First Nations, the people who have the least, gave so much of themselves and did it in a prayerful, respectful, loving way. All the stories about, it was really the youth there, because I've had the good fortune, because Phil is from there, to work with the people, Faith Spotted Eagle and LaDonna Brave Bull and Bobby.
Just to interject a minute, in case viewers don't know who Phil is, we're talking about Hereditary Chief Phil Lane, who has always been very deeply, deeply involved, a mover and shaker, if you will, within the compassionate community. And maybe you can also say a little bit more about your work with him.
Yeah, Phil Lane Jr., actually. His dad was amazing force unto himself as well. And actually, Phil and I met during the Seeds of Compassion, that event that with the Dalai Lama that kind of launched this. And it was the youth there. New York Times did an amazing story, and Vice has done stories about what happened there. Life is so bad for the young people on these reservations. This is the outgrowth of putting the First Nations, our Native Americans, into these boarding schools. And the story is unbelievable, because what it was, they were looking for a safe house. They were looking for a safe place to go. And they set up at the Sacred Stone Camp. But Bobby Jean Three Legs and her friends said, well, we'll do a run. And this was even before Standing Rock Camp was set up. It was March 15th, which was just, a year and a week ago. They ran to Mobridge, and then they ran to the Army Corps of Engineers, and they ran 2,000 miles. The young people did there, with the loving support and guidance from the elders, because their parents didn't remember the ways. They'd lost the ways because we assimilated. What Phil Lane's teaching, what so inspired me, and has been at the core of our work, were these guiding principles, that the idea is that starting from within, working in a circle, in a sacred manner, we heal and develop ourselves, our relationships, in the world. And when I heard that, I said, that is so wise and so brilliant. And what Phil was teaching, and has been for almost 50 years now, is that this fourth way, because the first way is when we arrived here, we imposed ourselves. My God, there's a beautiful eagle that's just landed right here on the, God, that is wild.
So you just got an eagle, and I just got this huge hawk that just swooped down and sat here and stared in the window at me on a tree. So
wow, that is right. That is spectacular. But this idea of assimilation, right? So you come in, you say, you're going to be like us. We're going to take away your dance, your culture, your language. And that's the first way. Second way is you say no and resist and fight. And that doesn't work either. Then the third way is resignation and hopelessness and despair, which is the condition on so many of the reservations and so many of the people whose lives have been so greatly affected by our presence and our insistence of imposing our way. But the fourth way is cooperation and collaboration and coming together and unifying one human family. And that's been Phil's message for all these years. And that's really been at the root of the work with the Compassionate Cities, the work that we've done on the Compassion Games. And it's a great privilege and honor in my life to work with Phil. And in fact, today at noon, this is being March 22nd, World Water Day. And then today at 5, Phil's going to be involved. We're going to do a similar webinar at noon with women, mostly women, but also Dwayne Howard. He was in the film Reverend with Leonardo DiCaprio, an amazing Native American leader. At noon, talking about water is life, and then there's a blessing for water at 5 o'clock at noon happening today. It's a full day, a lot of activities around World Water Day. So I'm grateful really for the teaching and the wisdom that Phil has shared with me and the partnership that we've had over all these years. And Lisa, I forgot where we were going. I'm a little.
That's okay. We went sidetracked, but it was a relevant sidetrack, and I think
good. I hope so.
The hawk and that, and
we're here to serve. Anybody watching this thing really wants to make a difference in their community. That's what we're here for. And I invite them to reach out. If there's anything we can offer, to give them that little extra support. Pitfalls to avoid, opportunities not to miss. It's going to take all of us everywhere all at once to make the shift that needs to happen.
Yeah. So I have another series of questions for you, but beforehand, I just see a note from Sandy who says, "Thank you, John, for creating such a vast and open field for people to find one another in a creative, fun, and important way where there is no room for fear. And most importantly, inviting us to bring our own unique creativity to provide how important it is that we show up with our own unique treasures and gifts." That's that's a very good.
She's really. We've been through a lot together, and she's made such a huge difference in the world. And I'm glad to hear that, because that is the idea here. We need to get ourselves out of the way, dethrone ourselves from the center of the universe, and learning how to work together. This is, I shared with you the other day, Lisa, the wisdom of Cosmic Lady, which I'd love to share because it's been such a guiding force for me, because it is hard to imagine how we've elected somebody like we elected and all the implications of that. And I honor everyone who did vote for Donald Trump, and I support that. I understand we need to do better to care for each other. But there was a woman known as Cosmic Lady, and this is the only thing I ever heard that kind of made sense of the mess we're in on this planet. And she said that planet Earth is the place that the souls of the slow learners are sent. And when I heard that, I said, wow, boy, if that's true, that we're all slow learners, because I certainly can see myself as a slow learner, then it makes sense. And in that spirit of being a slow learner, we need to learn from each other, and we need to make ourselves open and available to discover each other and realize the genius in all of us. And that's kind of the goal that we have with the games and with the charter, as I see it, is to allow people to take that and do things with it, the likes of which we never would have imagined. It's got to be, if there's any hope for us on this planet, that we're going to really, change our direction.
So something that you said earlier, and I hear you about changing our directions.
Yeah.
And my heart went out to you when you mentioned that it's really a challenge to run a not-for-profit. Having my own years of experience in the not-for-profit sector, I get that. And on that note, I want to just say to you, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the tremendous gift that you're doing.
Hmm.
And thank you for persevering and holding that space despite the challenges. So there always has to be something when we're holding a vision or a feeling in our heart that we need to do that carries us through those bumps and the challenges. And so my question for you is, what is that feeling for you? And where do you, in your heart of hearts and your biggest vision, where would you like to see the work you're doing take you and the world?
Well, I don't know what it's going to take to really um, move us. It's those choices each of us make. I want to know that. I really want to be more effective at this idea of waking up, starting from within. So it's my goal and intent to discover this authentic power. Gary Zukov is one of our partners, advisors, and this notion of fear or love is a very powerful little trim tab. And I don't want to live my life and do the work out of fear. It's very easy to. It's a fearful time, right? But my goal is to do it with love and to realize that it's an enormous privilege and gift to be able to do this. There have been costs to doing it. I was in the technology world and whatever. My own personal story was such, but this has been the most gratifying thing I've ever done. I guess so many Jewish boys want to make their mothers proud, kind of thing. If my mother is looking down on me, she says, okay, I'm not the doctor or the lawyer that you might have wanted, but I do feel as if the games and the charter and the work we've done with Compassionate Cities is something to emulate and something to inspire and something to help heal, especially a troubled world right now that's trying to find itself. I think we're in a period of questioning, and that's good. So for me, the idea that it's been able to enable one person to take up this banner and bring compassion to their community, that is fabulous. And it humbles me when I see the reports come in on the report map and what people are doing. And that inspires me to keep going. And there are times when you say, what have I done? I mean, gosh, I'm not good at all the things you need to do to be running a nonprofit. And if it wasn't for a great team with Summer and with Joey and with Lisa and the charter's support, and Dr. Doty and the people you recognized, and Sandy, like I said, we really do need each other. We really are a community here. I just want to invite everybody to lean in and know that, it gives us a great sense of satisfaction to be able to watch these little ideas that people have grow. And I think Judy Troutman in Ohio and Charles Barker in Dallas. And these are the heroes and sheroes of our time. And
Right.
choosing to make this a priority in their life. How do we get out of this short-term self-interest? That seems to be what's really, got our attention. And,
So with your background in technology, and I'm aware of time because we're going to wrap this up in a few minutes and invite people to come on to a separate link and participate where in more of an interactive conversation where people can explore how to take these ideas and implement them in their own community. But before we get there, given your extensive background in technology, and you're now speaking about how do we shift from being so self-absorbed to being of service. What role do you think technology plays in that? And how can just the average layperson utilize technology or other methodologies to help us shift?
Well, there is at the risk of being a technological utopianist, the truth is you change the medium, you change the practices. Look what's going on here right now. We're able to have this conversation, and not only are we able to do this live, and there are people all over the world that could tune in, and I have a lot of hope that that's going to make a difference, and it has made a difference. Mark Zuckerberg recently wrote a whole thing on building global community, and the truth of the matter is nation states is kind of obsolete in a lot of ways. There's 1.6 billion people on Facebook, and he is a wise young man. I'm really very, very inspired by what he wrote when he put out that note on what Facebook can do. It was kind of his way of responding, and to build safe communities, inclusive communities. And I'm very hopeful that we've reached a threshold with the technology. I mean, there's a French historian, Fernand Braudel, and he said that all development is driven by changes in the limits of the possible in the structures of everyday life. The limits of the possible have changed profoundly, and nation states are obsolete in a lot of ways. And I think that, climate change, for instance, and the challenges that that's presenting are reminding us that we're really all in this together. We're all in one canoe here. And if we can use this kind of moment in time to embrace these technological innovations, so many people have in their hands these devices. Now, I know it's not all good, and, there's limits, and there are, closes possibilities, but opens the possibilities. Mm-hmm. I'm really very bullish about what I think is possible now. I'm committed to push that envelope, mm-hmm. technology to strengthen our will and way of finding our path to a more compassionate world.
So somebody put in our chat, just so for our knowledge, not meaning, somewhat changing the subject completely, that the hawk is the messenger of the spirit world, and the eagle symbol was to signify courage, wisdom, strength, and its purpose was as messenger to the creator. The eagle was believed to carry prayers to the great spirit in the spirit world, and also has a special connection with visions. So how beautifully fortuitous that we have these two visitors on this call.
They didn't have to have an account on Zoom. They just kind of crashed the party.
Right. And
thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, of course, Sandy, and you, Lisa, and the whole idea of the women and girls as a sector. And it's inspiring. I mean, that's the other great thing of our time. We could talk for hours, I'm sure, but the rising of the feminine in all shapes and forms is perhaps one of the most hopeful things in our world right now. Right. So thank you for having me. It's my privilege and pleasure to be able to contribute in any way I can.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate it. And for those who are interested, we're going to, at the closing of this call, we're going to launch another call at http://, which I don't think you always need, but bit.ly, that's bit.ly /CCIR2R. So you can join us on another Zoom call, or there are dial-in phone numbers, which you can see on your screen. But if those who have called in, the dial-in number is 646-558-8656. And then the meeting ID is 653-718-545.
Fiona, I see, I just opened the chat window. If you could put that link in the chat window.
Yeah, I just saw that now.
Okay. Help me too, because I want to go to the after party.
Oh, right on. All right. So let's see, hold on. I'm going to type this now. I don't know, HTTP.
And sign up for Earth Week. I mean, that's the one thing I want to make sure people know is that today launches that co-op petition. It will begin on April 22nd, which is Earth Day, and go through the 30th of April. During that period, there's going to be a science march and a People's Climate March on the 29th. So.
Oh, thank you, Bree. Oh, Bree just stuck it in. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Bree.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Bree. Because I'm a little bit slow trying to type this. All right.
Now you've got that chat. There's a secret agent of compassion waiting to talk to you on the website.
Right on, right on.
This is Reed, just hovering in the background to let you know that in the mail that you received inviting you to this call, there is this link and the phone number. So it's also in your email.
All right, fabulous, Reed. Thanks again, brother.
Terrific. Thank you so much to Reed and Bree and Sandy and Susan and Betsy for your behind-the-scenes help. We greatly appreciate it. And John, thank you so much for your time and open-hearted spirit and the beautiful, beautiful work you do. And we will now switch over to the after party. And I thank you all. Thanks, everyone. Bye. See you in a couple of weeks on the next one. Oh, also join us on our Facebook, Reaction to Response Facebook page. Bye. Thank you.
For now.
Bye.